At first, you need an airbrush. Also, we need from AK Interactive Real Colors flat white, red brown, and German dark yellow, and British dark olive green. And as a final coat, flat varnish. To use these colors, we need a thinner. I also use it from Real Colors. First I fill half a pot with thinner and then 6 brush tips with the paint. Thus it is ready to spray. We start with flat white and spray the entire model as a primer. Next we use red-brown and start the pre-shading. We spray the deeper parts of the model to create an artificial shadow. Also try to draw thin lines on the edges of doors or the bonnet. As you may have noticed, my model is not yet glued together. I leave the tracks and wheels off. That's how I get better with a brush or airbrush. You see, I sprayed all the deep spots and the edges with brown. and the rear wheels of the tracks. Because they are further back, they are later darker and shadier. Let's get to the basic color of the vehicle, German dark yellow. The paint is sprayed thinly and layer by layer on the model. After the first shift, you will already notice that the dark yellow is darker in the places where we previously applied the brown. Do you want to have a different base color, for example olive green, you should use black instead of brown for the pre-shading. So prime the model white, black pre-shading and then apply the green thin. When you're done, the model should look like this. The previously applied brown shimmers under the dark yellow and creating an artificial shadow. Let's get to the preparation of the camouflage pattern. I have lined the interior with a blister sponge so that there is nothing of the camouflage color. And I started to cut stains out of a masking tape and stuck it on the model. These are the places the dark yellow should stay later. I stuck the masking tape to my painting surface and then cut out the patterns with a craft knife. I then distributed these on the model. The whole thing should look like this at the end. It is best to stick the entire underside of the vehicle, because there we do not want to have a camouflage pattern or something of the camouflage color. Once again, tackle all the splices and then off you go with a British dark green. As with the other colors, fill a half pot of the airbrush with a thinner and then stir 5 to 6 brush tips of the color. And the color is ready to spray. Spray now the complete model with the olive green. It is not necessary to spray the paint evenly. Small mistakes in the paint were normal then. As a result, the model is usually even more realistic. Now we use red-brown again and add a few brown spots to the green. Now comes the exciting part. We remove the masking tape and see our camouflage pattern. After removing the masking tape, I use the rest of the paint to spray the underside and the wheel arches of the vehicle with it. This helps us later to make the dirt in it. Let's get to the decals. These include vehicle number, license plate and the country code. Such a decal sheet is usually included with the model, or it can also be purchased in the special shop. I use a decal softener and a decal fixer from Tamiya. Now we need a small bowl of water. Cut the decals and dip them into the water. Leave the decals in the water for 2 or 3 minutes. Then you take the decals individually with tweezers from the water and dip them directly into the softener. You carefully pull the decal off the sheet and dip it into the softener for 2 or 3 seconds. Then you put it directly on the desired spot on the model. You then have a little time to move the decal to the correct spot. Let the decals dry for half an hour. Then the decal fixer is used. The lid has a small brush. With that, you generously apply the remedy to the decal. The whole thing has to dry again for a good half hour. Let's start with the chipping. For this I use chipping color from Hannomag. In addition, we need a piece of kitchen paper and a piece of a blister sponge. Now put some paint on a palette and dab the blister sponge in the paint. Now you dab the sponge dry again. We do not want to have too much color on it. Now you dab with the sponge on the model, especially in places where the paint could have chipped off. This is mostly on the edges of doors or the hood. They are very often touched or stepped on with shoes. Or also on the outer edges of the vehicle, by dense driving past dense bushes, for example. And do not forget the rims of the wheels. Even there the paint easily peels off. And so the result should look like, depending on how much your vehicle should be weathered. Now it's time for the first use of oil paints. Let's start with brown wash, earth, ochre, light mud, and dust. And later we need dark rust. Also we need the odorless thinner. We start with brown wash. We only need a small brush tip with a paint. Now we set small color dots on all surfaces. We do the same procedure with the ochre paint. And again with light mud. Now clean the brush with the odorless thinner and use it to mix the color dots together. This gives us a color filter that makes the paint look weathered. Let everything dry for a few minutes. Then you use again the clean brush with a thinner and goes over the vehicle. This time with vertical movements. So we create our first streaking grimes. Of course, we do all this in the interior too. Now we use a brown wash on the rims and the wheels of the tracks again. But now only the brown wash. And again everything is distributed with the thinner. Again, everything should dry well. You can see that the paint must have experienced a lot. And again, apply the brown wash with a brush tip. This time we use it in the recesses, such as the rear doors or hoods. And everywhere where you think that the dirt could accumulate there. Finally, the thinner is used again. Try to use it so that the paint runs into the welds. You can also distribute some paint on the surfaces. There are no limits, it's your model and should look like you think it's right. As I said, put the dots of the brown wash everywhere where you think the dirt can settle there. And here you can use a moist oil paint to create streaking grimes. Simply spread the paint out of the depression with a brush. You can also put small oil dots on the top of the sides, which you then pull down with a brush. Let it dry again and then it should look like this. If not, do not give up. We Germans say, practice makes perfect. Now comes a layer of flat varnish over the entire model to fix the oil paint. Now we use satin black. So I paint the rubbers of the track wheels, the tires, the machine guns, and the driver and passenger seat. Now I'm painting the tracks with Dark Tracks by AK Interactive. Now I paint the rear benches. For this I use chocolate brown from Vallejo. The shoulder rest of the MGs can also be painted with chocolate brown. If the benches are dried, they also get a wash. For this I take a ready-to-use wash for wood from AK Interactive. And again the thinner. Apply the wash over the entire seat. With a thinner, we pull the wash down in a few places. After the drying process comes beige brown. And we use a hard and wide synthetic brush. What we do now is called dry brushing. To do this, apply paint to the brush and then wipe off with a kitchen towel. Now carefully brush it over the edges of the seat. When you are done with it, we use beige brown for the backrests of the seats. Oh, don't forget to dry brush the shoulder rests of the MGs. Now I'm using Agrax Earthshade from Citadel, and I'll go over the backrests as well. Now I'm using Plate Mail Metal from Army Painter and dry brush all metal materials. Like the driver and passenger seat, the MGs, and I use it to make some edges look worn, such as the wheel arches, hatches, or the trailer hitch. Since we are so far finished with the interior, I finally glued the two main parts together. For this, I use the extra thin cement from Hannomag. This is the current status. You can tell the Hannomag has experienced a lot. Now comes another oil paint. We use dust and put some small dots of color on the outer surfaces. And distribute them vertically with the thinner. Now we use dark rust. This time I put the points where I think that there has already set the rust. And again, distribute with the thinner. Also, we use it on the track wheels and the rims. Now we use pigments. For that I take dark earth or a dark umber tone and a pigment fixer. It is best to use a pigment fixer with a small pipette. Let's take care of the wheel arches. Take the pipette and apply the pigment fixer generously to the surface. Now take the pigments with a brush directly from the cup and also dab it generously on the wet surface. You can also distribute something at the front or the rear of the vehicle. You can all repeat that 2 or 3 times. Moisten the surface with a fixer and then apply the pigments. Everything has to dry for a very long time now. Then it should look like this. Much dirt that has caught. So that it does not look too monotonous, I take a slightly lighter earth tone and apply it with a brush. I also distribute the lighter earth tone on the upper surface of the vehicle. So we create a layer of earth dust, for example on the hood. In the end, it should look like this. You could go over it again with a pigment fixer, but the fixer greatly reduces the visual effect of the pigments, so I usually leave it that way. Because finally comes again a layer flat varnish. This fixes the pigments also enough to finish without reducing the effect. I apply the pigments dry on the tires, starting with dark earth, and then I rub my finger over the surface so that the pigments remain on the wells. The same again with the lighter earth tone. Finally, finger over the sides and the treads of the tires. Finished are the dusty wheels. The tracks are the same as the underbody. Apply pigment fixer over the tracks and then apply the pigments with a brush. As the tracks dry, I glue the MGs to the vehicle. Now again with the brighter earth tone over the tracks. Now I use a pencil and go over the running surfaces of the tracks. Thus the tracks looks metallic. You can also edit the drive wheel of the tracks to create the effect of metal rubs on metal. Generally, you can use a pencil to highlight metallic points. Now it's time to glue the tracks on the vehicle. Take a good super glue for it. After you have also glued the wheels, the vehicle is ready painted. I hope you like my result, and I hope you are satisfied with your result. If you want, send me some photos via email of your models that you have painted with the help of this tutorial. I like to show them on our YouTube channel.